So far, 18th election of Lok Sabha and Vidhan Sabha has been completed. Soon after completion of election, the entire society engages in routine discussion like which political party is likely to form government, which leader is likely to take charge of which ministry, which leader is honest and efficient, who is not. Important issues that need to be discussed at every stratum of society but is never touched upon are whether the main goal of election will be fulfilled or not. Another important feature is the Aam Aadmi Party of Delhi contested in 22 seats at multiple states. Of that, 3 of their candidates won parliamentary seats from Punjab. Of the 7 parliamentary seats in Delhi, where the party won assembly seats with overwhelming majority in 2020, they lost all 7 seats to BJP. Common sense should suggest that residents of Delhi support BJP over Aam Aadmi Party. But these facts are far more complicated than that. Even though over the last 10 years, common people of India have just begun to realize that AAP government of Delhi has indeed brought about dramatic reforms in the supply of drinking water and electricity, physical structure of government schools, public hospitals, public housing, municipal infrastructure, job creation, women's security, above all, thoughtful and effective measures to minimize widespread corruption. These tasks were never undertaken or not even initiated over the last 75 years because the people of Delhi and Punjab have been exposed to all these facilities introduced by Aam Aadmi Party. It is logical to assume most of their candidates would win parliament seats from these 2 states, but election results turned out to be otherwise. Instead of support and encouragement of the works of Aam Aadmi Party to continue their works, mainstream media sponsored by BJP and government institutions like Enforcement Department, that is ED, Income Tax, Judiciary, Police, etc. are employed to prevent Aam Aadmi Party from continuing their works for the people of Delhi and Punjab. The net result is the main hardship of this party under false pretext are languishing in the prison. The central government is using all means at their disposal to break the party and bribe their elected representatives to defect. Indian politics has never been clean and professional, but savagery and barbarism being practiced by this party is unprecedented even in a corrupt country like India. When people of India become fully conscious of the main goal of election, then all political parties all over India will be forced to undertake and complete the kind of works that AAP has initiated, but unable to continue and complete because of planned and deliberate resistance from the central government and the mainstream media they sponsor. During the last 10 years, the kind of work AAP has undertaken in the interest of inclusive growth and prosperity of the underclass, the backbone of the nation, should be the main goal of all political parties that are genuinely committed to the development and prosperity of the nation. The government and the center, under the control of BJP party, instead of cooperation and support to the AAP leadership, are imposing fierce resistance and sabotage by misusing administrative and judicial power of the central government. In fact, these works aimed at the inclusive growth should have been undertaken and completed soon after 1947. That such works were never initiated. As said before, every second elected representatives of public offices are hardcore criminals and every third one is semi-illiterate. Their influence in national politics has increased significantly over time. Very few people have a clear idea about the real purpose of periodic election. The general population, be they so-called intellectuals, semi or totally illiterate, engages in lively debate on various aspects of election except its main goal. During the last 75 years, 18 elections have been conducted. In this context, an important question may be raised. how far have the main purpose for which such elaborate and expensive processes of elections are being conducted has been fulfilled. To express it in another way, the basic principles of national development and prosperity is to create a disciplined workforce by uniting the workers, peasants, and intellectual classes. This requires able and high-quality political leadership. Without that, inclusive growth and development of any society is simply out of the question. All those nations of the world that have attained prosperity and inclusive growth, whether they are left or right-wing, have deep differences but show similarity in one area. Without exception, they have had influence of the kind of political leadership that united their workers, peasants, and intellectual classes to work strictly in the interest of their nation. A factor of supreme importance is common people of the nation must be conditioned to evaluate two aspects of elected representatives of public offices. What are those two aspects? First, whether contenders of public offices have the mindset, experience, and required skill to undertake and follow through tasks related to national development. Second, whether contenders of public offices are covered with accountability. These two responsibilities are to be assigned to the public, who are the real guardians of all elected representatives of public offices. It is by no means reasonable to expect that common people of Indian society, inhabited by undisciplined, poverty-stricken, naive members, will have the ability to evaluate the contenders of public offices or monitor their accountability. To make matters worse, mainstream corporate media are engaged in serving misinformation. Their main goal is to confuse and misguide people to cast votes. Mainstream corporate media are engaged in serving misinformation. Their main goal is to confuse and misguide people to cast votes against their own interest. Hence, it is impossible for people to be conscious of their own interest and act accordingly. That our narratives are authentic and based on brutal facts must be acknowledged by those who have eyes to review the reality all around. How does one interpret the situation? Those 7 elected BJP members, whom residents of Delhi just elected to the parliament by defeating Aam Aadmi Party contenders, have dutifully interrupted supply of drinking water to their electorate in this scorching heat, for no other reason but to gain political advantage by discrediting Aam Aadmi Party. Their media are busy spreading that water scarcity is linked to the incompetence of Aam Aadmi Party government of Delhi. Many of the voters might even have believed such an explanation. How can the common people become conscious of their own interest, rights, and privileges? Not by following mainstream media. People can be made conscious of their own interest through indigenous mother tongue-based schooling of their national standard at the state expense. Schooling based on scavenging of leftovers of Anglo-American West can never ever create mindset required for evaluation of vote seekers and protection of self-interest. Every developed and prosperous nation of the world, be they left-wing or right, without exception, have reformed their entire education system, made it mother tongue based, and raised it to international standard. According to them, anything foreign must be digested to retain that is useful and discard what is not. This is the right track towards nation building, which is beyond discussion. It is worth noting that none of the powerful elements of society has ever patronized any project before or after an election to make people conscious of their own rights. No special inquiry is needed to understand that participation of common people is the main factor for inclusive growth and development. Therefore, improvement in the life quality of human resource is essential and major factor for inclusive growth of any given nation. The right kind of political leadership is the key towards achieving that goal. This implies casting a vote every 5 years can never bring about prosperity in any given nation or community. A nation or a community develops and prospers when their members are conditioned to question whether a given political leadership is in favor of mobilizing the community of peasants, workers, and intellectuals to protect their own interest. Even more important, when common people find it important to inquire and understand whether their political leadership has the desire, ability, and experience to mobilize all segments of the nation. When they understand how important this way of thinking is in their own social, economic, and political life, this kind of mass consciousness evolves and takes root through mother tongue-based indigenous schooling. Education, imparted through scavenging of Anglo-American leftovers, can never ever arouse such values. It is not only difficult, but almost impossible to make people conscious about their own rights and privileges simply by presenting videos through social media, especially when the powerful corporate media houses, with the support of central government, are actively engaged in confusing people with misinformation so that masses can be persuaded to support ideas and policies that are harmful to their own interest. In the most populous country of the world, the main issue is who will take control of their natural and human resources. Whoever honestly and sincerely try to spread consciousness among the people of their rights and privileges will encounter not only resistance but brutal hardship, even physical threat. This explains why Aap lost all 7 parliament seats to a party of criminals and anti-social elements like BJP. This explains why the main leadership of Aap is in prison. This explains why all oppositions are being intimidated and harassed by the agencies of central government controlled by the BJP, the party of criminals. But it is interesting that current society of India is being propped up and propagated by the Western mainstream media as world's largest democracy. No special inquiry is needed to understand why. India is a land of 3 million square kilometers. Because of its size, the land is stuffed with rich natural resources. The most populous nation on earth has 5% subjects who are Anglophone. Hence, a large stock of human resource, powerful, resourceful, and ready to serve the Anglo-American West. During the last few millennia, those who were attracted to the natural and human resources of India are still eyeing these. Those who are propagating India as the largest democracy, their target is not the language, literature, history, tradition, culture of India. Their target primarily is natural resources, secondarily cheap Anglophone human labor. 95% of the nation who are not Anglophone, if they are not capable enough to protect their own interest, then others who infiltrated and siphoned off wealth worth $70 trillion for the last 3 centuries will have to be confronted anew. In this context, let me refer to an interesting anecdote. Those who live in the city of Kolkata are familiar with the Dalhousie area, where a 2-century-old palace called Raj Bhavan still exists. That structure was completed in the year 1803. It was the reign of a British Governor General named Lord Wellesley. Before construction of the palace was complete, the governor hurriedly shifted to the unfinished structure. During that time, 350 million Indians were under the rule of British Empire. Between 30 to 35,000 white-skinned British were physically present in India to look after their empire. In this context, Lord Wellesley made a comment: if every single Indian throws a handful of sand, entire British community will be buried under the sand. He also stated to keep control of the empire lifestyle on the imperial masters must be as dazzling as an emperor. At this point of time, keeping control of India's human and natural resources is becoming ever greater question. In the year 1947, power was transferred to the Indian leaders. It was not really independence. Anglo-American control must have been reduced, but in some key areas, Anglo-American control might have been reduced, but in some areas, it has not been released. Instead, it has been consolidated further. It is important to note that from Pakistan alone, an estimated about $1 trillion is being transferred each year. How much is being transferred from India to overseas has never been declared, but it is estimated that the amount is significantly more than Pakistan's. Pay attention to the schooling of India's human resource. Schooling creates and destroys a nation. What is the undisclosed aim of the schooling? It is nothing less than total and absolute imitation of those whose mother tongue is English. Their dress, their complexion, their food, their chattering, their gesticulations, everything ought to be slavishly imitated. That too, in total contempt of our own language, history, literature, culture, tradition, everything indigenous. Aam Aadmi Party, the kind of initiative they took to radically transform the entire education and healthcare structure. If 1.45 billion people are exposed to that kind of schooling and healthcare, then just imagine how will that exposure affect the entire world. Based on this interpretation, every Indian must decide in which direction they will extend their support. Decision must be taken by every single Indian. If you like what you see and hear, please subscribe and ring the bell.